do you know those are blackberries? And I thought that was a really funny question. And I was, you know, blackberries and raspberries are as simple as it gets. That is the quickest, easiest way to get started with wild edibles. You don't have to know what you're doing. So if you're new to wild edibles, this video is for you. This is Olivia from Sweet Sweat Homestead, where we are attempting to make as much food as we can with our hands from our home, from nearby our home, or as close as possible. Mid-July, and one of my favorite things to do in the summer is go berry picking. Hi everyone, this is Olivia from Sweet Sweat Homestead, and that's Brooke behind me. She's being such a good girl, just hanging out with me, wondering why we're not walking right now.
Do you want to go on a walk? Do you want to go on a walk? Yeah? You want to go on a walk? Yes? Yeah? You want to go on a walk? Okay.
So a bunch of years ago, I was working at a coffee shop and I had gone foraging. I'd found a ton of blackberries in the woods, went home, made a nice berry sauce, brought some to work to share it with my coworkers, and most of them were really suspicious. One of them asked, "How do you know those are blackberries?" And I thought that was a really funny question, and I was like, "'Cause they look like blackberries?" She's like, "All right, but don't birds poop on those?" And I also thought that was a funny question. I was like, well, probably. I mean, I didn't grab poopy ones or anything, but what do you think happens to the ones in the grocery store? You think they just like grow in that little plastic container and they're just in a sanitary environment the whole process? That's not how it works. So anyway, I thought this exchange was really funny. She ended up still remaining pretty suspicious, and she was like, "Thank you, but I think I'll pass. That's not for me." And that's fine. I think it's really good to be suspicious about things before you put them in your mouth, especially if you're just not sure what it is. But it made me think, you know, why would she be suspicious of blackberries of all things? They're the easiest thing to spot. They grow everywhere. They're just so obvious to me. But I grew up picking blackberries and raspberries, wild mint. But I was thinking about it, and the thing is they might look obvious to me because I've grown up doing this and thinking about them within the context of the woods. But blackberries actually don't look like the store-bought blackberries. They look different. They have a slightly different shape, definitely different size. But more importantly, they're out of context. They're in the woods, which can really change everything. So you know how you might see somebody on a weekly basis, you see them in the coffee shop or you see them at the grocery store, you say hi, they're a familiar face to you. But then you see them at the park or someplace else and they're just out of context. And you have that feeling where you're like, okay, I know that person. Where do I know them from? Why do I know them? Have we had a conversation before? I think we have had a conversation before. It's that really awkward moment where you're like, oh, I should say hi to that person, but I cannot think for the life of me who they are. But I know them. That is often how wild edibles feel. They feel sometimes familiar, especially if it's something like blackberries where you know you've seen them before, or maybe you've just seen a picture of them. And there does seem to be something familiar about it, but you're just not sure, and you really don't want to be wrong because that would be a rough day. So it's good to be sure. It's good to double check your field guides. It's good to get familiar with wild edibles within their context. Context is key. And so we are going to talk about the context of berries. So now I find it a little less funny that she was suspicious about these berries and didn't know how I identified them. She was asking really good questions. I thought they were silly, but they were certainly not silly. And we should all be a little suspicious about the foods we eat. You're such a good girl. You having fun? Yeah, you having fun, baby? You like going on a walk? Yeah, except we're not walking, are we? Like, we're not walking. Mommy's taking video. So blackberries especially, but raspberries also, like to grow in these areas where you have a lot of brush, you have a lot of trees, a thickety type area that opens up into a wider area, into more sunshine. So what you want to look for when you are looking for raspberries and blackberries, and this is just a good way of thinking about wild edibles in general, you want to think about the different parts of the plant and do they identify well with your manual or with your foraging book, with what you've found from other people. Are all of the parts of the plant that are explained to you similar to what you're seeing? So with raspberries and blackberries, you have this shoot that comes straight up from the ground, okay, and it has thorns. The newer ones are green, the young ones, probably just this year, only this year old, they are green, and then the older ones, they turn brown, and the brown ones are usually the ones with most of the berries. But see how it comes just straight out from the ground. And if we follow this up, just keep in mind there are lots of thorns, so I'll just follow this one up. So if you've heard the saying, leaves of 3, let them be, that is not the case with raspberries and blackberries. You really like those leaves of 3. When you're looking at a blackberry leaf or a raspberry leaf, what you want to look for is this kind of spear-headed, arrowhead-shaped leaf with teeth all around it. See how toothy that is? See, it's not smooth on the edges. It's very toothy. Kind of reminiscent of the thorns. Remember, these have a lot of thorns, which are no fun if you decide to go berry picking in shorts. I've done it. I don't recommend it, but you know what? Sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. So anyway, this midrib, see this kind of center seam that's going down the center of the leaf? That's called the midrib. And then from the midrib, coming out of it, you have the veins of the leaf. Right? So with the veins here, they are alternating, and they're not perfect opposites. They're not parallel. So this one is, right up here at the top, and then the one down below on the opposite side is just a couple millimeters below it. And then on the opposite side again, you have another vein coming down just a few millimeters below that. They do not come out directly side by side or parallel from one another. So the good thing about that is that you can identify the blackberry bushes even before the berries are there. So if you're walking through the woods and you see these leaves and you're thinking, maybe that's a blackberry, well, you can kind of identify it just from the leaf alone. And remember, these leaves are really healthy. They are very high in antioxidants and vitamin C. A lot of people use them to make tea. Some people report that they have fertility benefits. Not sure if that's true. However, the vitamin C part is true, the antioxidant part is true. So drink up. These are the different stages. Even this one's getting dark purple, but this one isn't even quite ripe yet. But you see the color variation as they turn ripe. How do you know that this is not a raspberry? I mean, even if this one wasn't here, how would you know this is a blackberry and not just a raspberry? Well, it's not coming off easily. See, I'm tugging on it and it's still there. That means it's not ripe yet. Okay, but also blackberries are a little bit more globular or circular, like a ball, whereas raspberries tend to be a little more oval. Other than that, they're pretty similar. So another reason why context is key is because of the flavor profile. So you'll notice that the ones that get more sunlight are a little sweeter, juicier. The ones that are grown more in the shade tend to be a little bit tartar. And these are really subtle variations, but it's really fun to try those different things. Find a bush that's in the shade and then compare it with one that's in better sunshine. And you'll see there is a difference in the flavor profile. There is also a difference in the flavor profile between blackberries and raspberries, even though the plants are so similar. I would say blackberries, I want to say they're a little bit more tart and on the citrusy side of things. I'm not saying they taste like citrus, but they have more of that flavor profile where they're a little bit, a little more citrusy. They have a sharper note. Whereas raspberries kind of feel more on the peachy floral side of things. So even though they're such similar plants, and without the berries, they almost look identical, at least for me. Maybe there are people who could tell them apart without the berries, but I don't know how you would do that. Didn't get very many berries while making this video, just a few really, just a handful. But at this point, my dog is hot, so we gotta get going and get home. Look at her. I think she's ready to get home and get some water. So we're gonna call it quits on berry picking today, but they will still be here for probably another week at least. Right, baby? You good girl? You good girl, baby? One of the reasons why you might want to forage instead of just going to the grocery store and buying it. And I'm not saying anything against going to the grocery store. We go to the grocery store all the time and get things. But when you go to the grocery store, you have to think about all of the packaging. There's so much packaging that is included in all of these products. Come on, Brooke. Another thing you have to consider is the carbon footprint. Those fruits and vegetables often come from pretty long distances. Maybe they come from the tropics. They come from thousands of miles away a lot of times. That means they have to be shipped over. That means more gas. That means more emissions. So to get these blackberries and raspberries, I just had to walk up my hill. They're very close to my house. I actually do have some growing in my front yard as well. But I like to also utilize the ones in the woods because they do have a different flavor profile. And I wanted to show you guys how to find them in the woods if you haven't had that experience. Another important reason why foraging or picking wild plants is really beneficial is because the nutrition content is really high. So that orange that's been sitting in the back of your fridge for the last 3 weeks, it has vitamin C. It does not have as much vitamin C, however, as the day it was picked. The longer it goes, the more of those vitamins and minerals and micronutrients start to break down, and so you're not getting as much when that food isn't fresh anymore. Well, when you're foraging for wild plants, that's as fresh as it gets. I put a lot of those berries in my mouth, and that's a lot of vitamin C. That's great nutrition. That's great antioxidants. It's another reason to have a garden, and even if you don't have a garden, maybe just try to go out and start simple. You know, blackberries and raspberries are as simple as it gets. That is the quickest, easiest way to get started with wild edibles. You don't have to know what you're doing. You just need to know to look out for those specific berries. Don't touch the others, just know those two berries. And you're gonna have a ton of vitamin C in your diet. And if you pick enough to freeze them, then that vitamin C actually holds up pretty well when frozen. So you can enjoy that in the winter time. This stuff in the wild is also pesticide free. So nobody's out there spraying those things with pesticides or Roundup, although we have learned that Roundup and similar pesticides can spread over great distances. So even if you don't spray it on your property, if other people nearby you are spraying it might wind up there. So that's really unfortunate. It's a really big problem in my opinion. But in the wild, we know people aren't spraying it with pesticides, which is great. She's such a coonhound. I left early from berry picking for her because she was hot and tired and needed water, and now she is exploring and I could be picking berries. Coonhounds. Right, so this is Olivia from Sweet Sweat Homestead. Thank you guys so much for joining me as I go on my little walk to get berries, me and Brooke. I want to encourage you guys to do the same. Get out there, enjoy. That fly's really friendly with me. Yeah, get the berries while they're still good. For some of you guys down south, they might be over already, and then some of us up north and maybe even up into Canada, you still have a week or two to go to enjoy them. So get out there, pick some great berries, get some good nutrition, know where your food comes from, know that it was produced in a sustainable way and picked in a sustainable way. Leave some for the birds, all right, please. But yeah, you guys are awesome. We'll see you next time.